We are now moving on to consideration of nominations for Lieutenant Governor. Do we have nominations for Lieutenant Governor? Mr. Haller, would you like to come up here and...
Well, Ken's a tough act to follow.
Toastmasters.
Right. My name's Henry Haller, and I'm from Allegheny County. And I was the candidate for the Libertarian Party for Lieutenant Governor twice before. Had a great time doing it, and I think I spread the message out a little bit. But in the interest of always improving, I'd like to nominate a candidate who I think would do even better than I did. Kathy and her husband Doug have been members of our county chapter for as far back as I can remember, and I can go back pretty far in this party. She has a resume that includes prior election as a candidate to the Cannon-McMillan School Board. In fact, she even served as president of the Cannon-McMillan School Board. So with that kind of a background, it gives her considerable political credibility. So it's my honor to nominate Kathy Smith as our candidate for Lieutenant Governor.
Necessary, but are there any seconds that wish to speak on Kathleen's behalf? Come on up here, Mr. Sheets.
I've known Kathy for a while on Facebook. A lot of us know each other a while on Facebook, and yet here we are at this convention finally meeting each other face to face and able to talk to each other face to face. Kathleen, last night when we had our conversation, struck me as a person who is very good with the ideas of libertarianism. She is going to give us a clear, concise, consistent, professional message, and it is just a joy and privilege and an honor to say that she is going to be our next Lieutenant Governor. Kathleen, thank you. Come on up.
Do we have any other nominations for Lieutenant Governor before we give Kathy the floor?
Motion to close the nominations for Lieutenant Governor.
Second. All in favor of closing nominations, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm honored to accept the nomination of the Libertarian Party for Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I've been a Libertarian since before I knew the word, and I've been a member of the party for most of my adult life. But I began as a passive member, as most of us do. It usually takes some specific issue to motivate us to move from that passive participation to active participation. For me, that original issue was outcomes-based education. A lot of people in this room are old enough to remember that was the beginning of the increasing intrusion of the federal government into local schooling. I was silly. I had a dual degree in elementary and special education, and additional training in education policy. I always thought education was supposed to be child-based, not based on outcomes expected by a federal bureaucracy. And it was that issue that moved me to run for school board. Now, I learned a lesson that anyone here who has operated in local government has certainly learned. Most of the people you work with are committed to increasing the power of the government. You feel like the Dutch boy with your thumb in the dike. But we were able to do a few things. In my own district, I was able to restrain tax increases for the majority of the 8 years that I was on the board. I also had the opportunity to participate in the Pennsylvania School Board Association's legislative conference. And there we were able to make inroads for charter schools. And that's about as far as that body was willing to go. After 8 years on the school board, I had said no to too many people, and I lost my third run, which I actually considered a credit rather than a deficit. I want to say that 8 months ago, I had no intention of running for statewide office. Then I met Ken Krawchuk and I met Dale Kearns. And those people and the committees and support staff that they have amassed around them made me feel entirely comfortable with taking on this venture. These are people that you want to be associated with. These are people who are running based on procedure, policy, deeply held beliefs, not a quest for power, not a quest for a title. And that was the final decision-making element of my choice. I would be delighted to spread the libertarian message across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
We'll open the floor to questions for Kathy. Got questions?
You talked about some of your elected experience and stuff. What other experiences do you have, either with a job or volunteer situations that would help you?
I was a manager for Borders Books for 21 years. It was the most delightful work experience I can ever imagine. I've been retired since 2011 when they unfortunately closed. Since then, I have been the treasurer for 5 years now of the Community Scholarship Foundation of Canon Macmillan. It's an element of Dollars for Scholars. You may have them in your own school districts. It raises private funds for scholarships for students. I have been on the board of the Washington and Canonsburg locals of the Business and Professional Women of Pennsylvania. I also serve on the district board there and have been a trained trainer in our business and professional speaking program. So I spend probably 3 nights a week out in my community, volunteering for those organizations.
United We Stand, both of you started United.
That's true. When I say that the first thing that moved me into politics was the outcomes-based education, that was the first one that motivated me to hold an office. But we were active, my husband and I, in the Ross Perot campaign. And after that election, we maintained the United We Stand organization for about 30 months. We put out a monthly newsletter, issues-based. And when that movement turned into a kind of populist movement rather than a freedom-based movement, we weren't willing to go along with that when they turned it into a political party. We were there because of the issues and ability to advance the cause of freedom. So we left it at that point.
Other questions?
What is your stance on homeschooling, and what would you do in this case?
I think homeschooling is the best option for many, many families. I don't care what your reason is. I don't care if you have a special needs child. I don't care if you're doing it for religious purposes. I don't care if you're doing it because you want to be able to travel with your children and not have to worry about getting faked excuses to take them out of school. I believe that whatever money is available for funding education should follow children, not district lines, not bureaucracies. Ideally, I would like to see all education out of the hands of government and put into the private sector.
What would be some of your top objectives as Senator?
Well, I looked up the job description for the Lieutenant Governor, and there are really 2 responsibilities. Oversee the Senate when it's in session, and sit on the Pardons and Parole Board. Now that's a pretty light job description. So my goal would be to assist Ken, hopefully take on issues like education, some of the social policy, and leave Ken to work on the tough stuff, the budget, the taxes. But I think that we can make a good team splitting those responsibilities.
Amen.
As you would be, as Lieutenant Governor, as you would be the head of the Parole and Pardons Board, would you assist Mr. Krawchuk in his effort to pardon all non-violent drug offenders?
I would be thrilled to hand him each one of those pardon slips and watch him sign it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As a follow-on to that question, would you be advocate for the restoration of people's Second Amendment rights once they've been pardoned?
Assuming that those are nonviolent offenses that were not specifically gun-related crimes, I would absolutely say that. Also, I think that the right to vote should be returned to people once they have paid their debt to society.
Kathy, you speak very well. Are you a Toastmaster?
Ken, I promise, first thing when I get back home, I will join Toastmasters.
Yay!
My question is not a philosophical question. My question is more of a, so as the campaign starts, if you end up winning the nomination, are you committed to putting your boots on the ground in as many counties as you possibly can as your schedule allows?
Absolutely. When I made the commitment to accept this nomination if it was offered to me, I went to those volunteer organizations that I belong to, and I told them that once I made this commitment, that was my primary focus from now until November. And I have kind of cleared the board. I have done what I need to do to wrap that up and hand it over to other people. My husband and I are both free to travel. He has a job that he can run from a computer, and we're able to take that with us anywhere.
So if we get you a bus, you can be on the road.
Oh, you get me a bus, I won't be home at all.
Do we have any other questions?
Well, I've been proud to work with you in Washington County for several years now, and I think I know the answer to this question. Everybody else should probably get an opportunity to ask. Why should I vote for you?
Why should you vote for me? I think that I have a deep understanding of the role that liberty should play in our lives. I think I have the ability to convey that to people. I think I have enough experience with public policy to help mold legislation if it's needed, or public opinion when that is needed. I think that I am a good standard bearer for the causes that everybody in this room, I hope, believes in. And I intend to be the best partner that Ken Krawchuk as governor can possibly have.
Any other questions for Kathy before we move on to the vote? Okay, once again, as we have one candidate and NOTA up for election here, we will do this by a show of hands. All those in favor of nominating Kathleen Smith for Lieutenant Governor, please raise your hand. All those in favor of NOTA? Kathleen Smith, congratulations. Come on up and...
I spoke briefly about my experience on the school board. And I spoke briefly about the fact that anybody who runs for local office soon runs into that dam of bureaucracy. It may be state, it may be federal. That showed me the many, many ways in which the layers of bureaucracy prevent even the most well-meaning people at the local level from instituting change. And I think that that is something that we as libertarians need to focus on. We need to strengthen our local governments and our local social organizations. The federal and state governments have displaced the role of real communities in real lives. And I think that that contributes to the increasing dissension and division among our society at a broader level. And when you talk about that dissension and division, it's definitely a negative for our society as a whole, but it does present the Libertarian Party with a very, very unique opportunity in 2018. We all know that Pennsylvania is defined as one of the critical swing states. And when you hear the pundits talk about it, they presume that 45% of the state is dyed-in-the-wool Republicans, and 45% of the state is absolutely committed Democrats. They think that 10% in the middle somehow flip-flop back and forth every 12 months to decide an election. I think the pundits have that wrong, along with many other things. When you talk to Democrats and Republicans, even in Pennsylvania's most gerrymandered districts, between 40 and 50% of the population says that they are dissatisfied with their representatives at the state and federal level. They're just too afraid to cross that aisle between the R's and the D's. Somehow they have grown up believing that whatever you voted for when you were 18, that's your lifelong identity. But our message resonates with many of those dissatisfied voters. I think if we go out there and we identify community by community, group by group, the issues that matter to those voters, and show them explicitly the liberty-based solution to those problems, we can steal those voters as if they belong to the Republicans and Democratic parties. We can motivate those voters to vote Libertarian. Obviously, one voter group that is underrepresented in the Libertarian Party is women. And I do intend to make a specific approach to women voters. Too many women have come to believe that if they get divorced, if they become widowed, if they're a single mother, the only support system they have is the government. And that's one of the problems we have when the government interferes with local support systems, local charities, local services. So I want to educate women to understand that there are other ways to solve those problems. There are other ways that they can protect themselves and their children. The other thing that's interesting is that more and more women are starting their own businesses. And to me, small businesses fighting the obstacles and the licensing and the regulations that they have to operate, in many municipalities, you can't run a small business out of your house. And if any of you are entrepreneurs, you know that committing to a building, a facility, rent, ongoing expenses is one of the biggest obstacles to starting your business. So those women entrepreneurs are even at a greater deficit than most men starting a business would be. And I think that's a huge opening for us. There are farming communities, there are maker communities, there are craftspeople, there are many, many, many opportunities for us to get into the electorate with organizations and groups that we have not even touched yet. And that's going to be one of my big missions. I want to get out into the hinterlands, the places where the Republican and Democratic nominees are not likely to go.